the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Me. Where is the share?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes, sir.
You can continue.
Yeah, but it's not visible to me. That is why
Okay.
there is some issue. Let me just wait for a minute.
Please.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Is it visible now?
No, please.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, all of you. So today I would like to take to the session of role of industry in the net zero 2070 that has been committed by the India in the Glasgow in the conference of parties, 26th conference of parties by our honorable minister as a part of the Paris Agreement. When we as a country committed to the one particular the target, so it is the responsibility of the every citizen of this country to support to that particular object and to show to the global community. So what is the commitment of the India and how we are committed to any particular work that we talk. Here I am going to cover at the end of the session. So what is the genesis of climate crisis? That is also very important when we talk about anything. So what is the background and what is the root cause of that particular the crisis? What is the global and the India's emissions? Where we are when compared to the India, when we compare to the global and compared to the any developed countries, what is our share? What is the global framework that is available to tackle this particular crisis? Because the climate change is also one of the global issues like the war, trade, and then the climate. So these are the global issues. That is why it is taken at the UN level, United Nations level. What is our climate actions? What are the different commitments that we made and what are the policy instruments and levers that are available for our actions towards the climate? We also had a strategy to achieve the net zero, and we have submitted our strategy paper in the form of long-term low emission development strategy that is called as LTLEDS. What is that and what are the attributes and what are the focus areas and thematic areas that are available in that particular document, and what is the role of industry? And for the technical purpose, so how the carbon accounting can be made? So what does it mean and what is the protocols available and what is the methodology, so that we can able to learn at the end of this particular session. Just to very briefly, I would like to give what is the genesis of the climate change. And when we talk about the climate change, so there is a difference between the weather and the climate. The weather, we talk about the weather, we also talk about the climate. Whereas it looks like a similar meaning, but it doesn't have the same meaning. Since the weather is a very short-term period, whatever your rainfall or whatever the temperature, other the parameters, So that is indicated in the short-term period is normally referred to a weather. And when we call it as a climate, normally it is a very longer period. So about 30 years. So what is the status of that particular period, 30 years? That is called as the climate. What is actually the drivers of this climate change? So there are the two things. One is the human drivers, so the anthropological emissions, and then the natural drivers also uh, responsible for the climate change. So if we take the human drivers or the anthropological activities, so that is one is the burning of fossil fuel like electricity, heat, transport, so which emits the CO2 and into deforestation, then agricultural livestock. So that is also one of the major activity that contributes to the methane and the nitrous oxides. Then industrial process, of course, the carbon dioxide is anyway there in the process of combustion, and the fluorinated gases and other the gases in the manufacturing process. Then the waste management, both liquid and solid waste. So these are the human drivers which actually the responsible for the climate change. When we talk about the impact, so of course these are the list of a very illustrative list I can say. So there are several impacts of the climate change. So some are like raising the temperature, the extreme weathers, then melting of ice and sea level rise, the ocean changes, then ecosystem disruption, human health, economic losses, displacement, and inequity. Of course, we are seeing. So, what is the rainfall pattern that is happening now? What is the heat that is we are experiencing in our day-to-day life? You know that the year 2024 is the highest, so hottest year on the record as of now in the history. So, what is that the reason? The primary reason is so there is a global warming effect that is called greenhouse gas effect. You know that the greenhouse effect means whatever the radiation that comes to the reach to the earth, so that will some of the radiation radiates back, but it has to be escaped to the atmosphere, but it is reverting back. So this effect is called as a greenhouse effect. What is the reason? So there is a layer that is forming by these greenhouse gases. What are the greenhouse gases? Like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases are called as a greenhouse gases, which are the responsible for the greenhouse gas effect and which are the responsible for our global surface temperature. When our surface temperatures are increasing, then entire cyclic pattern of the climatic system, the monsoon patterns, all these will get disturbed and will have the ill effects that we discussed in the last slide. So if you see the carbon dioxide, so it is basically from the fossil fuel, whether it is from the combustion of the coal or the petroleum products that we use in the transportation. So these are all in the energy sector and the industry sector. So mostly responsible for the carbon dioxide. Of course, deforestation and then the forest fires, the burning of agriculture residue. So these are also contributes to the carbon dioxide. Then the methane that is from the agriculture and landfills. Then nitrous oxides from application of the fertilizers. Then from the livestock. Of course, from the livestock, when there is an enteric fermentation, the process called as an enteric fermentation, which is responsible for the nitrous oxide. When fluorinated gases, of course, these amount, if you see from the absolute amount is very, very minimum, but its global warming potential, it means the intensity of the warming of each molecule is very, very high. For example, if you take the SF6, that is sulfur hexafluoride, that is being used in the circuit breakers for making and detaching the circuits, for that itself has got 23,500 times the effect then that made by the carbon dioxide. It means so even the smaller amounts will have the lot very huge and very significant impact by these fluorinated gases. So when we go to what is that our historical say impacts and what is the how much that the surface temperature is, you know, so there is a 1850 to 2020, so 1.1 degree. So there is a the scientific assessment by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So that is called as an IPCC, which provides the best available science on the climate change. It summarizes the what is the surface temperature, global surface temperatures, and what is the mean sea level, and then also compare with the how much it is increased or decreased when compared to the pre-industrial level. So when we talk about the pre-industrial level, so that is 1850. Before 1850, we take it as a pre-industrial level. So after the industrialization, so about 1.1 degree centigrade has been increased. You can see that 1.1 is looks to be a very small, but our global temperature itself, if you see the across, if you take the land and then ocean and other all the surfaces, it is about 12.6 that is been the presently. So any incremental, any 1 degree of increment or the 1 degree of increment also has got a very, very huge impact. It does not mean that 1 degree means the 1 degree temperature in the particular area. So in a particular area, it is about 4 degrees or 5 degrees or 10 degrees. But overall, as a globe, so if it is 1.1 degrees means it is in a variation from the polar areas to the your equator and then other areas, the tropical and other areas. So if you see the global sea level rise, so relative to say 1900 or the 1950, so it is already then increased by 70 centimeters. So 70 centimeters means so there is a lot of area that is just 1 meter or less than 1 meter above the MSN. It means so any increase of the global mean sea level, so that may result to disappearance of the so many islands that are as on date the existing today that may not be available in future. So that is the intensity of this particular the impact of the climate change. Then we talk about what is the reason. So the reason is your greenhouse gases. So how much it has been emitted as of now? Is there any calculation available? Yes, it is available by the IPCC. That IPCC has assessed in its 6th assessment report, which has been released in 2023, says that between 1850 to 2019, so 2,560 gigatons of CO2 that has been emitted to the atmosphere. So it is emitted to the atmosphere means it is, for example, CO2, if you take, it is a very long-lived and well-diluted gas. It stays in the atmosphere about 200 years, not less than 200 years. It means whatever the molecule that is emitted to the atmosphere, it will be going to have the radiative forcing for about 200 years. It means not only to our generations, it is to the next few generations. That is why whatever the act that we do, that not only impact us, but it also impacts our future generation. When we see who are responsible, who have done how much. So if you see the North America, that is the 23%, their population is only 4%, but they are contributed to the 23%. If you see the South Asia, so that is only less than 4%, 4 to less than 4% of Hello?
Yeah, you're audible.
Earlier also audible, no?
No. In between, we lost your connectivity for the last 1 minute, but you're audible now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, can I go to back? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you can go
I
to
will.
that CO2 emission.
Yeah. This one?
The last slide. CO2 emission
Yeah.
by different countries. North America, South America, Asia.
Yeah. So, yeah, it is. I'm on the screen only. That screen only.
The screen is not visible.
Okay, I will share once again. There is. I think there is some technical issue again. I hope now it is visible.
No. Yes.
Yeah. See, what is our historical emissions, cumulative emissions as of now? Somebody says that so there is a carbon budget concept is there. So the carbon budget means so how much this atmosphere can bear or we can emit to have a certain degree of temperature raise. So there are different scenarios like 1.5 degree scenario, there is a 2 degree scenario. Each 1.5 or 2 degree has got the different impacts. So for each impact, so how much we can able to emit. So that is called as in a budget. So that is if you see 1.5 degree centigrade. So if you want to limit to 1.5 degrees, our emissions, cumulative emission should be 2960. That is CO2, gigatons of CO2 that we can emit. But as of now, by 2020 itself, we have emitted 2560 gigatons of CO2 emissions. It means we have left only the 400 from the 2000 onwards. We have already lost the how many? The 5 years. And each year, 60 million, about 57 to 58 million tons of CO2 that is being emitted globally. So 400 gigatons means, so how many years that we can have? So that you can calculate. So what is the urgency of this knowing the cumulative emissions and mitigating the greenhouse gas emissions is a very, very important. So when we see who has contributed much, how much. So if you see the North America, so who are housing 23% of the global population. So they are responsible, say they are only responsible for 4% of the global population, but their emissions are 23%. Whereas India is about 18% of the global population, but we are responsible less than the 4%. So that is the fate. There are a lot of discrimination and disproportionate emissions have been released to the atmosphere by the different worlds in the name of industrialization, and then the practices that has been used for their developmental plans and strategies. So which sector is responsible so what is the share of each of the sector? If you see the CO2 from the fossil fuel, so it is about 60 to 70% of the CO2 emissions from the fossil fuels. Then land use change in the forest, that means the forestry sector. Of course, in our country it is a sink, but in several countries, particularly in the Amazon forest and in the Latin America and other countries, so there are a lot of emissions even from the forest because of the mismanagement of those forests. Then non-CO2 emissions like the methane and nitric oxide, so that is from the agriculture, and then your livestock and other F gases, so that are responsible for the remaining portion of the non-CO2 emissions and the GHG emissions. We can also talk about the carbon budget. What does it mean? So the carbon budget means so how much we can able to emit to the atmosphere to hold or to limit the any our objective of 1.5 degree or 2 degree of our limiting as per the Paris Agreement. So there are two scenarios, under the Paris Agreement. One is 1.5 degree warming, and then there is a 2 degree warming. Under 1.5 degree warming, the carbon budget that is there is 2960. So we are only left with the 400 say gigatons of CO2 from the 2020 onwards. It means, so as per the WMO, that is World Meteorological Organization, we have already reached to 1.5 degrees in 2025. Of course, now can we take it to the back, or what is the probability and what is the mechanism and strategies available to take it to the back, that we can discuss in the coming slides. So if you take to the 2 degree scenario, so that is 1150 gigatons is available. It means another say 5-6 years or maximum 7-8 years, so that we have the leverage to reach to the 2 degrees centigrade. But each degree scenario has got the different impacts. So with the 1.5 degree, you are already experiencing what are the impacts. If another 0.5 degree, that if increases, so what is the frequency and intensity of the extreme weathers, so that will happen, that you can imagine. And then it will also there is a possibility of the threat to our existence and survival, so that may happen after certain degree of temperatures. When we talk about the global, so what is our contribution? So our contribution is in India. So we inventorize our greenhouse gas inventory in a periodical way, and also submit to the United Nations Conference on the Climate Change. So the last submission was in the form of BUR4, that is biannual update report, the 4th biannual update report that has been submitted in 2024. As per that, so we are about 2.9 gigatons of our gross emissions. Our forestry and agriculture sector contributes to a sink of 0.5, that is about the 0.522 the gigatons of the CO2 that is being sequestered. So our net emissions are 2.43 gigatons of emissions. So what is the global emissions? Global emissions is about 58 or 57 as on date, the gigatons. So when there is a 58 and you are 2.4, so currently we are contributing about 5% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the world. But what is our share? So if you see, our share is we are housing of 18% of our population. If we go to the critical analysis, so which sector contributes what? So if you see, the energy sector is the maximum responsible, that 75.66% is from your energy sector. Of course, energy sector also includes the power generation, transportation, whatever the fossil fuels, whether we use for the purpose of combustion, for generation of electricity, for generation of heat and steam in our industries, or the transportation, whatever the petroleum products, so that everything is attributed to the energy sector. And the second thing is the industry sector. Industry sector is 8.06%. This is as per the IPCC guidelines. So here in these emissions, in the industry emissions are basically from the process related, that is fugitive emissions, not related to the combustion. So whatever the emissions that are responsible or emitting from the combustion are attributed to the energy sector in the IPCC guidelines. When we compare to the agriculture sector is 13.72% of our emissions are agriculture sector, particularly the rice cultivation, then enteric fermentation of the livestock, then fertilizer application. So these are all activities that are responsible. Then the waste. So waste is about the 2.56% of greenhouse gases are attributable to the waste sector. If you see that what are the different gases and what is the percentage, so 80% of our emissions are in the form of CO2, and 13.32% is from the methane, and 5% is from the N2O, and 1.02% from others. Others means like F gases and Say electricity, the production. So basically our electricity is on the coal based. So that is responsible for the 39% of the total emissions. Then road transport, enteric fermentation, non-specified industries, iron and steel, residential, then cement production, agricultural soil. So these are the different top emitting categories as per the 2020 survey. You know, this the topics like the war, trade, and the climate change is a global issues. It is there is no limitation of the boundaries. CO2 is a well-defined gas. So if it is emitted here means, so whatever the emission that is there, so it is, if it is about say 400 ppm means, so whether it is, if you take in India or America, so it is of the 400 ppm. So such a well-diluted gas. So there is no boundary for these emissions. So when there is no boundary and when there is an issue, so there is a global crisis. All the countries and all the parties that are responsible are have to take a collective actions. And so that is why in the UN Conference of Environment and Development, that is normally called as an Earth Summit, has taken the three the agendas or the three declarations or conventions. So one is on the biological diversity, and second one is on the climate change, and third one is on the combating the desertification. So these are the three conventions which are related to the environment. So this UNFCCC, the recently in 2015, so has transformed to the Paris Agreement. So the Paris Agreement has adopted in COP21, that is the 21st Conference of Parties in 2015. Here, the everyone, almost the all 190 plus countries are the parties to it. Of course, in the recent times, the United States has come out from the Paris Agreement, but still they are in the UNFCCC. If you see, then objective is basically to limit the global temperature to 2 degrees centigrade, and also to pursue effort to 1.5 degrees. And also it talks about the adaptive and resilience efforts that has to be taken by the different countries. Here, basically, what are the levers are also been given, like each country has to give the nationally determined contributions. So it is a country has to set its own emission targets irrespective of the development or developing, whether it is a seed or a LEC, the whether in irrespective of its developmental status, every country has to set its own emission targets or the climate actions using the CBDRC, that is common but differentiated responsibilities, because the goal is common, that is 1.5 degree or 2 degree to limit the global temperature, but the responsibilities are differentiated. So whatever the responsibility that is to be taken by the India and by the America is different. It has to be updated 5 years, and then it being say stock take will be taken at the rate of 5 years. And there is a means of implementation also has been given in this particular agreement, that is the finance and then technology and then capacity building that has to be taken by the developed and developing countries. So earlier, the $100 billion has US dollars has to be given from the developed countries to developing countries. And the recent last COP that has been held in the Baku and Azerbaijan, that has raised to 300 billions. Then under this agreement, the developed countries has to provide the technology and also the capacity building to the developing countries. Of course, that what is the commitment? These are the only commitments, and the commitments are never fulfilled. So that is the problem, and that has been normally negotiated in the each of the conference parties when we say negotiate. When we come to the India's climate action, so what is our climate action? So we have submitted in 2015 the first intended the NDC. Then we have also updated our NDC in 2022, wherein, so there are 8 goals. Out of 8 goals, the 3 are quantitative nature. So remaining are the qualitative nature. So in the quantitative nature, so one is that the reduction of our emission intensity of the GDP by 45% when compared to the 2005 level. 2005 is our base level. Whereas our non-fossil fuel based energy installed capacity has to reach the 50%. And then third one is the creation of additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. So this is the progress where that we have already achieved 50% of our non-fossil fuel share in electricity generation, whereas our reduction in GHG intensity, we have achieved 36% against the target of 45%. When we talk about the additional carbon sink, we have achieved 2.29, say to the target of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. There are the several missions. So because the policy is also very, very important. So that the policy levers are like the government of India under National Action Plan on Climate Change has made that 9 missions. One is the solar mission, then National Mission on Energy Efficiency, then National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, the Water Mission, then Himalayan Mission. So there are these missions are basically to address the mitigation as well as an adaptation requirements of this country. If you see under the so we have already achieved the 50% of our this thing, and then if you want to see what is the progress of each of the renewable source like solar, wind, and by the February, so these are the statistics.